Greetings everyone, welcome back to Blade Bias. I am someone, in case you couldn't tell, who's always loved engineering, solving interesting problems in interesting ways. And I particularly like when we as humans take two things that work perfectly well on their own, things that you feel shouldn't really go together, and then put them together to create something that neither one could be on its own. An example of this is cars. Most of the cars that I have owned and driven in my life have been hybrids. You have your typical gas engine and an electric engine for a car, both of which are great. They both have their advantages and their disadvantages, but when you combine them, you create something that is super cool. You have a more traditional gas-powered engine that is boosted by a battery and by an electric motor in some cases, to vastly prolong the range of a tank of gas. That's super cool. I like that a lot. And I can finally say that I have tried what I believe to be one of the first hybrid Balisongs, the Zippy Balisong Parallax. This is super cool. I want to take you through it really quick. But, as I said before, huge thank you to Ted Flips for sending this and some other of his Zippy stuff out so that I could check them out. The Parallax is a sadly now discontinued Balisong from Zippy Balisong. One of, in my opinion, the goats of Balisong engineering. He's made some genuinely good, genuinely unique, and fascinatingly wacky Balisongs in his day, and I think the Parallax takes all of that and shoves it into one beautiful hybrid Balisong. Very similar to the prototype that EPS has been showing us for a few years at Blade Show with their wraparound G10. This is not a plastic Balisong despite what it may look like. This also is a metal Balisong. Zippy gave us his traditional entree of his 3D printed nylon scales. He sprinkled on his usual dashes of 3D printed inserts to allow for some color customization, and then smacked us in the face with a very non-traditional course of grade 5 titanium on the inside of the handles, finishing it off with a beautiful S35VN stainless steel blade, and finally garnishing the whole thing with his signature Zippy race washers. This Balisong is a beauty that I have admittedly neglected for far too long. And there's one simple reason for that: the price. This is a $400 Balisong. It's a discontinued $400 Balisong. Although, if you're watching this shortly after this video came out, there's actually one of these left on the Pancetta website. So if you really want to get yourself one of these, you might be able to snag that before someone else does. $400 is a lot to pay for a Balisong. Especially a lot to pay for a Balisong that when you shake it, it kind of rattles around a little bit. And when you touch it, it's plastic. It doesn't feel very premium in the hands. And I think that's the reason that I kind of stayed away from it a little bit. That and the fact that I was planning on buying one at Blade Show, but I just genuinely didn't expect it was going to be $400. And I thought, oh wow, that's way too expensive for what I can pay right now, which it was. But man, and then I started thinking about it. What's another Balisong that you can get? Well, you can't get any more, but that you could get for $400 that has grade 5 titanium and an S35 steel blade. The Slift T. The Slift T is one of my all-time GOAT Balisongs that I constantly talked about how good of a value it was. It was one of the greatest value live blades that you could get at the time that it was released. And this is about the same price. So no longer do I think that this thing is a little bit too expensive. No longer do I look at this thing and go, yeah, but it doesn't feel as premium as it should. Oh man, my fun socks always leave these freaking fuzzies everywhere. Oh well. This is a cool Balisong, man. So starting off with the design, we've got the little splashes of color from the typical Zippy inserts, but you also have what I'm calling these fins, which let you see through to this metal construction underneath. And speaking of which, this is a metal construction underneath by the looks of it. And I know this wouldn't actually work, but typically when you have like a sandwich Balisong with scales, if you take away one piece, the whole thing kind of just doesn't work anymore. Granted, you could just have this part in the middle, but If you take away the middle, then you've got nothing left. The scales won't hold any weight. It won't hold together. But if you do that on this, if you take away that middle metal part, you still have a fully wraparound handle. Like, this is still a fully usable, maybe not usable, but it's still a fully built handle. And I'm assuming if you take off the G10 on the outside, this would still be a fully built handle. Again, I understand that it wouldn't hold together, but you get what I'm trying to go for there. This is a hybrid Balisong in the purest sense of the word, because the plastic gives you the typical grip that you get from plastic that you can never get from something like aluminum or even titanium in some cases. This almost sandpaper-like grip that Zippy's products are all now famous for. But then the metal comes in to give it that weight and balance distribution of a normal Balisong, effectively bringing together metal and plastic in a way that it's never really been brought together before to create something that is better than either of them on their own. This is one of the coolest plastic Balisongs I've ever seen, and it's one of the coolest metal Balisongs I've ever seen. We'll talk about how it flips, and then we'll talk about the thing that I found out that really blew my mind. This thing flips probably the most normal out of Zippy's entire collection, which is really cool. The metal in the... Actually, before we get into that, if you take something like the Cycloid LC with the Lucha blade, you can tell that the handles are all plastic. Like, it is very obvious that there is no weight in the handles. There's very little weight, I should say, besides in the spacers down here. And then when you combine that with a metal blade, you have something that's really fun to fan that I talked about a few videos ago. But this allows that weight to come back and be distributed throughout the handles. The handles are genuinely heavy here. Not too heavy, but heavy enough. This is a more handle-biased experience that you aren't going to find on any other plastic Balisong because it's distributed all throughout the handle. It genuinely does feel like a weighty metal Balisong in your hands. Not so much like the palette did, where it was kind of that halfway middle ground. This full-on feels like a heavy metal Balisong in your hands, and I think that that is super, super cool. You have fully distributed weight throughout the handles, which means that you have a typical handle bias that I think people are really going to enjoy. You have a good amount of end weight thanks to the tungsten weights in the end here, which you can customize just like Zippy's other products to make it a little less or a little more handle biased, but I don't think you would ever get like truly blade biased with this. And then you have a fully fleshed out steel blade to make this thing flip like a typical metal Balisong. It's wonderful. It's got a good level of handle bias to it to make rollovers really, really nice. Fans do suffer a little bit, but it's nothing that I can't get used to like any other Balisong. And because we have a slightly rounded face here, it helps with the fans and choker fans quite a bit to make a flipping experience that I quite enjoy. I think this is one of Zippy's most competitive balances or competitive Balisongs that he's made yet. And I really, really like flipping it, more so than I really thought I would. But the thing that really blew my mind with this thing is the fact that all this time I've been asking for, toolless spacers, like on the Cycloid, to be integrated into a metal Balisong, something that's a little heavier, something that I can flip a little more reliably each and every day without getting that plastic fatigue that I usually get. This has that. It's not toolless, but it is hardwareless, at least as far as I understand. If you want to just adjust the weights, Zippy includes a hex key in every package that the Parallax comes in. And I believe that's what you use to tighten the weights here. People were saying, oh, there's no screws. How do you adjust it? There's little holes here. I'm pretty sure you can put a hex key in there and either pop this part out or just use it to tighten the screws. But you can also put the hex key through this little hole right here, and it will eject some weights out of this little hole that you can see within the channel here. And then if you want to add weights, you just put a little ball in there, press it in with the hex key, and boom. No screwdriver required. Now, you still do need a tool, but it is hardwareless. But that's not where the fun ends. Because the coolest thing is, I believe if you put the hex key through this hole right here, push it through the handle, and then use that as like a grip to lever out this spacer, it will just come out. I don't know with how much force because I haven't tried it, because this is Ted's and I don't want to break anything. I also don't have the key or the tool with me. But it just pops out. And then you've got your typical Zippy spacer. Pop in some weights, pop out some weights, and then press it back in with your hand, and it's locked back in there. That is so cool. That is so cool. I thought this was all hardware. I thought you had to take this thing apart to adjust the spacers. That's another reason that I wasn't like the most interested in the Parallax to begin with. But it's what I've been asking for this whole time. It's not exact, but it's close. So the Parallax is a hybrid balisong that creates something truly unique that is super cool. And I really do wish that it wasn't discontinued, because I tell you what, if I had the money, I would probably pick one of these up next Blade Show or something like that if they were still a thing. This thing is super cool. I just really like it. Huge thank you to Ted Flips for sending me this thing and plenty other Zippy stuff to check out for you guys on the channel. You are incredibly generous, Ted, and I really, really do appreciate what you do. Thank you, Zippy, for making this thing. Thank you for keeping innovation alive in the hobby. Not that it's really dead, but you know what I mean. Your stuff is always just an absolute joy to check out. And thank all of you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful night. Maybe check out the Bally Awards if it hasn't happened yet. But until next time, I'll see you guys then. Later.